I have waited to hear the following statement for at least a couple of decades, and I'm sure every child out there has waited to hear the following statement as well, that too much homework is a pointless exercise for students. The Irish education system is stuck in a vortex, and homework is actually creating bad habits for life in our nation's children, says our next guest, Dr. Naoisé O'Reilly. Dr. O'Reilly indeed has 8 years' experience in second and third level education, both here and in the UK. She's coordinated university degree and master's levels programmes, lectured at Southampton University, been a personal tutor in a variety of subjects in junior cert, leaving cert, O levels and A levels, and has set up indeed homework clubs as well, for example in Blanchardstown. Let's hear more as the children of the country cheer in unison. Good morning, Naoisé.
Good morning. How are you?
We all waited to hear it. Too much homework is bad for us.
I know, nobody's been brave enough to say it up until now.
We actually used to tell our teachers that any homework was bad for us. What's excessive homework, Naoisé?
Well, what we're finding, the tuition centre that I run, the Homework Club, we work with students from the age of 6 right through to adults returning to education. So there's a huge spectrum of people. And so this is something that's sort of come out of 3 years' work here. And then also I ran a workshop for Aspire last weekend for parents supporting their children with homework. And I kind of asked during that workshop what the point of homework was. And the answers were a little scary, but I got back. So that's why I released this statement. So in the case of 6 and 7-year-olds, what we're seeing is that people are working anything up to 2 hours a night. For anybody in secondary school, they're sort of doing a standard 4 or 5 hours a night. So what we see is that people are working sort of Monday to Thursday, go to school, come home, work very late, maybe take Friday evening off, and then still end up weekends of Saturday and Sunday fitting in bits of homework as well. So it's like it's a really, really stressful on families.
I did that. When I'm whether I'm proud to say it or not, but I did that when I was in school.
So did I.
I studied at a minimum 4 or 5 hours a night, every night, and including Saturdays and Sundays for my leaving cert, because I felt, and thousands of others felt, I need to do that. That's the only way that I can get through so many subjects and get the necessary knowledge to tackle the exams.
Yes, like there was some excuse for me doing it as a dyslexic, because generally you can sort of take the time that it takes most people to do work and multiply it by 3, and you kind of have the time it takes a dyslexic person. So there was some excuse for me doing that, but even I had very kind of effective sort of strategies. I didn't realise myself how clued in I was in school to how I needed to learn. And one of the reasons I sort of set up the tuition centre 3 years ago was because I wanted to develop a learning method that suited everybody, and that meant that people were working very effectively. So we never give homework from here. We feel that if someone comes down and spends an hour with us, that they work very well, that they've really taken part in the class, that it's either being sort of given to them in a sense that's either visual, auditory, practical, or kinesthetic. So it's something that suits everybody. They've really taken the knowledge on board, that they should really be doing very little outside, because you've already experienced it, done it. We remember what we do. We remember what we enjoy. So, you know, we all remember the things that we like doing outside. Why should school be any different?
Is the essence of homework not, on one level, to ensure that kids will pay attention in school for a start, and on another level, and I suppose the more popular conception of homework would be that it's about reinforcing what the kid has undergone, the process the kid has undergone, the instruction they've received during a typical school day?
In terms of the sort of reinforcing the paying attention, I kind of feel that the class should be set up in such a way that everybody's really engaging and really interacting with it. And even the photograph that was included with the article in the Irish Examiner yesterday was our classic sort of scenario of the classroom, tables laid out in rows, chairs behind them, no kind of interaction, no talking, no movement around the room. I kind of believe that the classroom environment should be set up in small groups and tables where people actually talk things out, ask questions, work together, actually take part in the class and take part in the problems and try things and do practical exercises in all classes. And so if you do that, there shouldn't be that much reinforcing to be done. One of the things that came back out of the parents last week in the workshop was that parents almost expect homework to be set as some sort of an assessment of what's happening in the school environment. I feel that the onus should be on the students. It should be, the good things about homework is that it should be promoting independent learning. And it should be promoting you setting tasks and setting goals for yourself. But you can do that in sort of interesting ways that are kind of superficial to the topic and are more interesting and more evolved, and having an interest in the area and going off and looking something up on the internet and doing some research and developing research skills and project work And that's not conventional homework. That's not just sitting down and doing the same math problem you did today another 10 or 15 times tonight. And the big thing, too, is that there needs to be a gap for you to reflect as well, because you might be able to do the maths problem today because you've learnt it off. But if I ask you to do it in 3 weeks, can you still remember how to do it? Did you really understand it?
So
that's a much more effective way to learn.
So your point is not so much that you're against the principle of homework as such, but you certainly feel that it needs to be much more focused.
I think it needs to be much more focused. I think it needs to be completely reevaluated. I don't feel that people should be spending hours doing work outside. All the things that homework should not be is it should not be teaching bad habits for people to take work home continually and creating stress for themselves. We don't want people to do this in the workplace. We like them to go into their job, work effectively, go home, spend time with their family, their friends, do social activities, let go, and then come back in refreshed into the office.
All right.
School shouldn't be any different.
Let's start the blame game. The blame game here is the popular conception is, I have heard parents in my time say, so-and-so's a useless, good-for-nothing, lazy teacher. They never give her, she never gets a stem of homework. They're doing nothing in that place.
Well, I feel that the parents should be able to talk to their children and say, what did you do in that class? Is that interesting? What topics have come out of that? There's much more effective uses of family time as well. I'd much prefer to see people spending time cooking at home with their family, sitting around the dinner table and debating the politics, watching things on telly and being interested in them, going to art galleries at the weekends and museums and doing all of the other things that you should be doing outside. And you get a sense of what your child is interested in and what they are really taking on board and what they want to do with themselves. I find it quite frightening when you ask a 5 or 6 year old, what would you like to be when you grow up? And they come up with crazy, wonderful ideas like, I'd like to be an astronaut or an explorer. And by the time I ask somebody that they're 15, what would you like to be when you grow up? Oh, I don't know, I'm useless at everything. So that's kind of what our school system's doing.
Yeah, but parents, and I want to stay with parents for a minute, we'll move to teachers. Yep. Parents are the very first to say to Johnny and Mary, do your homework, didn't get any, mammy. I beg your pardon, get up that stairs. And because parents have been brought up in the system where they equate the amount of homework children get with the quality of instruction that's being imparted.
Well, that's not the sense of what's come back over the last 3 days since I started this debate. There's been an overwhelming response on our Facebook page, on the parents that have spoken to me, on people who've rung me, into my inbox, on all of the sites, on, News Talk, their Facebook page, other people comments back. Every parent has come back hugely in supportive of this, that they feel that their children are doing far too much homework, that it's really stressful, that their children never get to go out and play in the evenings, they don't get to do anything else. Parents feel that they're constantly having to prop up the system by stepping in and helping the children, especially if you have a child with some sort of a learning difficulty. From the age of 6, you can expect to do 2 hours work with that child every night just to try and help them. And in some cases, the parents are even doing the homework for the children rather than having them go back to school without it done because the child is so upset. So there's a vast majority of parents out there who don't feel that way.
I'm horrified. I'm horrified at the idea. I have 2 little nieces of the ages, they're now 5 and 6, but I recall sitting down with them, doing their homework and helping them to do their sums and that. I'm horrified at what you just said there, that a couple of minutes back, that children as young as 5 or 6, and maybe even younger, are coming home with 2 hours of homework.
Yes, no, I think that's a frightening concept. And I think it's frightening that they're spending weekends doing it as well.
So do I. I think it's terrible. And plus the fact, of course, that it's compounded that parents are under such pressure nowadays, and where they have more than one child, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's switch the focus just for a minute to teachers. And one teacher has just contacted us to say, look, I know that schools have homework policies, and they try to limit it to say first years. In fact, we can just go to this teacher now, whose name I'm not sure if she wants to give it, but we'll just see. We'll use the name Anne for this teacher. So good morning, Anne.
Good morning.
You're listening to the discussion that we're having with Naoisé here. From the perspective of a teacher, give us your view.
Well, every school has a school policy. The department ensure that we have a school policy on homework. First years, that's not more than 3 hours. As a maths teacher, I will tell you that you never give more than 3 sums. You will not understand. The idea is, as he said, to reinforce if they can understand the sum. It is also to give them some form of independent learning. We try and teach them how to study, which is, I think, what she's talking about when you're going on to 4 hours or something when you're coming up to an exam. The other thing about the classrooms, about trying to have them in groups and so forth, the problem with that is our schools are all built. Our schools are built for, in some cases, the last 100 years. You know, there's only so much that we can do with that. I'm also a science teacher and I work in a lab. I can't move my desks around. They're fixed to the ground. So they're fixed to the water tap and the electricity and everything.
Stay with me there and stay in that exact spot, because we have a good signal with you now and it broke up a little bit earlier.
Oh, sorry.
And could I just ask you one question?
Yeah.
As a teacher, do you feel generally that if you didn't give homework, that your commitment to your class would be questioned by both the school and the parents? As the point I made earlier that, that teacher doesn't give any homework, they're very lazy.
Yeah.
So you feel teachers are under pressure. Do you feel that teachers are under pressure to the point that the more homework I give, the more reassured parents will be about me?
It is a little bit about the same way. If I give homework, and we'll always give homework, some form of learning or something, if it's not written homework, it's not considered homework.
Yeah. Anisha?
And sorry, just another point there. The same way the parents find that they want you to give them notes constantly, even though we've asked them to buy a book.
Yeah, I've encountered that notes syndrome in my time, that, great teacher, gives out loads of notes. Nisha, what we have here is, I think, that teachers would be probably among the most relieved, well, not maybe as relieved as the children would be, but would be equally as relieved as the children to find this whole area of homework refocused, but that teachers are as much victims of the race for points and the pursuit for results as indeed the students are. Stay with us, Anne.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. Like, I feel that half of the time, all this homework that's set has to be corrected. And I feel a lot of the time in school that quite simply what you really only do is homework. That's the whole focus. Trying to think of the points that were brought up there. About the tables and chairs, I understand the lab environment, that's the case, and you can just get people up out of their seats for a while. The idea is to keep changing things. I certainly went into a lecture hall room last week myself to run a workshop, and I just had everybody rearrange the desks and drag them into squares. And so you can do that. You can work with the environment. You just have to do it. And you have to, it's very good for people to actually take control of their own space and go in and actually take it over. And that was part of my workshop, was to actually show people that it's a bit like creating a dinner party. You bring people in, you make them part of the environment, you introduce them to each other, you say something nice about them, you give them something to do. You know, it's the same scenario when you create a class environment.
You see,
So
part of the problem, sorry for cutting across you, part of the whole situation is, of course, what Patrick Pearse called the murder machine 100 years ago, and it is still the murder machine of points, because I'm not Bruce Forsyth here, and points don't mean prizes, but points mean places in university, and as long as we have that kind of murder machine system, the race for points, and Anne will get your opinion on this. Basically, teachers, students and parents are all caught up in this, which is best.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, let me get Anne first, and then Nisha, I'll come back to you. Anne.
Yeah, the race for points, I understand what you're saying, but I just want to bring it back about the different type of learners in our class. We are taught to do that, and I just want to know, has she stepped into a classroom lately and asked these things? Because when we get the and now they're going the on-spot inspectors, we don't know.
Right, that.
I'm sorry, I'm finding it very difficult to hear, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry.
Right,
yeah?
Repeat that, Anne. You just faded for a second there.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
When you step into a classroom, go back to that, yeah?
Yeah, sorry. When you step into a classroom, you'll see that teachers are doing that because that's how we're taught. And that,
yes, I agree.
Yeah, that the kids aren't just sitting down all the time.
So there is more.
No, there definitely has been a shift in the focus. It's just not feeded through to everything. That's what we're sort of seeing in students. So essentially, the learning method I've kind of developed is called Purple Learning Project, and the idea is that you do everything in a way that's auditory, visual, practical, and kinesthetic. So you allow everybody to fit into the environment, regardless of whether they do actually have any learning difficulties, sort of thing. And you brought up the whole thing of books and notes. We never use any textbooks or any notes. at the homework club. I just don't believe in it.
Naoisé, could I just say to you that within the school system, and again we're coming back to what you were about to address there a minute ago, the whole race for points thing. As long as the race for points thing is in being, as long as we have the current examination system, which is all to do with recall. Now, I know there are proposals to reform the junior cert and that, and base more on project work and that, but as long as we have a system where kids go in and over a period of 7 or 8 days, their entire future is judged on the basis of their recall, I think hopes for not giving homework certainly aren't possibly realistic as the system is set up.
I totally disagree, because what happens essentially at the homework club is that the students come to us. They spend very short periods of time with us. They only generally do one subject, but yet they do better across the board in everything. And they go back to the exam environment and they do very well. And the reason they do that is because they've managed to take the knowledge on in such a way that they really understand it, that they've really engaged with it, that they can really recall and remember it. And so they go into exams very confident that they know things very well. And they have done a huge amount of techniques with us in terms of time management, expression of themselves, how they express themselves, structure in writing, all the key skills that you need for life. And they go back out and they perform very well. And so they do very well in the points race and the point system. I don't have any need to change that any more than I have a need to change the curriculum at the moment. I simply see it as a tool and a means to an end that we do very effectively once we do things slightly differently for everybody along the way.
Before I let Anne go, and just to come back again to the point of the system within the secondary school, and I appreciate that Dr. Naoisé O'Reilly is working within our own tuition system, bringing different things to bear on it. In your typical average secondary school, and we can appropriate the same to primary schools, just to reiterate again, you as a teacher feel that you are compelled by the system to impart as much of the traditional homework as possible. Otherwise, your role will be judged negatively by either both school authorities or parents.
Yes, totally.
And
if I actually, sorry for interrupting you there, if I decided that I wasn't getting a book for my class, there would be uproar.
All right.
If I didn't put a textbook down on a book list. Even if it isn't as appropriate as I would like it to be, because the majority of the time, one textbook isn't. We use, a couple of, bits from different textbooks.
Yeah.
Then the same thing would happen.
All right. Well, Anne, thank you very much for joining us on that. Of course, the kids would be the very first to say that teacher never gives us any homework, Mammy. She doesn't do anything and judge. But I think it's important to point out here, I agree with Naoisé. I think the system is rotten and is wrong. And I also agree and fully empathise with you, Anne, that you're trying to function within it. I don't think there's a teacher out there who wouldn't love to work around the system that Naoisé is talking about, but there's a certain complexities have to be addressed. We'll let you go, Anne, and we'll keep Naoisé for the moment, and thanks a million for getting in touch.
No problem.
And people here are always welcome indeed to get in touch. Of course, Naoisé, we understand where the difficulties within the system, but it doesn't take away from what I think. I would agree with you. I think that homework needs to be focused in an entirely discovery manner rather than rote learning manner.
Yes, totally. And I like the reason that I sent this press release out, particularly after the workshop last week, was because I wanted to raise the debate and I wanted to raise the questions. And in raising the questions about homework and the way homework's set and the way that we learn at home, I've inevitably raised the question about how we teach within the classroom and what we're doing and what we're achieving and what we're reassessing when we set homework. And so that was why I raised the whole debate. And I've been really delighted with the response with it. It's really raised a lot of questions, both in terms of teachers, parents and students.
I'm delighted actually that we've covered this, because I think it's necessary to raise those questions, because I think the teacher trying to raise it in isolation is on a loser, because they'll come under pressure from school authorities and parents, and I think it is very much an integrated thing. Ultimately, Dr. Naoisé O'Reilly, I suppose it comes down to, it's not about quantity, it's about quality.
Yes, it is, and it's about skills, and it's about the individual person. It's about each individual person. You can't just assume a system. Everybody has to find themselves and find who they are and be themselves, and that's really important. And we've been really bad at that across a whole range of areas with people, not just in terms of homework. It's far more reaching than that.
Well, hopefully it'll spark a debate amongst people that I think it's fundamentally, patently, humanly wrong that youngsters should be sitting in rooms for 4 and 5 hours a night. I did it. And you know, in retrospect, it wasn't necessary. I think we can do it much more efficiently, and it's inexcusable that children from the ages of 4 or 5 are sitting in rooms doing homework. I think homework should be banned for primary children, and there should be no question of kids, you know, in primary school doing 2 and 3 hours a night. So hopefully it'll have sparked the debate. Dr. Naoisé O'Reilly, as I told you, is an education expert in this area, in both second and third level, both here in Ireland and the UK. So in essence, I think she is speaking from a position of experience on this particular issue. Naoisé, it's been very good talking to you, and hopefully we'll do it again in the future.
No, likewise. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much indeed, and good morning to you.